Today, I finally got all the parts together to do the mods I've been dying to do on my Scout 60. I have a Bassani 2-in-1 long black exhaust system. I've got the Power Commander 5 for the Scout 60, and I've got a Trask intake manifold. And I'm hoping today to get all three installed and the bike started up with a basic map because I'm almost at my 500-mile mark for the first service. So it's going to go in at that time, and good old Burt's going to get dyno tuned to take full advantage of the Power Commander. So let's get stuck in. Here's the haul of parts. We've got the Power Commander 5, and here's a Trask intake manifold, and then all this stuff behind it is the Bassani 2-in-1, and then I've got a couple of drag specialties. I think they're 12mm O2 sensor plugs, because the Power Commander, unless you use the auto tune, is a closed loop system, so it does not use the O2 sensors. So let's start up the Scout. Hear what Burt sounds like with the stock pipes. I mean, considering all the regulations I'm sure this has to meet, that's not a bad sounding exhaust. But you can actually hear the gears of the engine over the exhaust. It's that quiet. A couple additions here I should mention. I've got some nice built-well grips. Now, the throttle tube is so chubby on this side, I tried to put a set of 7/8 grips on it from Lowbrow Customs, and they split because it had to get so wide to fit over the throttle tube. And let me tell you, the factory grips on this bike, not only do they suck, but they're glued on, so you're going to destroy them getting them off. Now on the non-throttle side is a different story. They fit on okay, but they're a little too easy to get on because obviously it's a 7/8 bar and I was using a 1-inch grip set. So what I did is I just used some black silicone RTV because they weren't super loose. Actually weren't too loose at all, but I wanted to make sure they weren't going to move. I get numb hands from riding, so the other addition are these HVMP bar weights, and they're not the heaviest ones they make, but they will help reduce some of those vibrations, and then the wide cramp buster out at the end. My bolts that I painted up, the 10 by 1.25, the M10 by 1.25 bolts, the paint started flaking off of them. I got a rubber washer, a nylon washer, and then a plastic Christmas tree, and I went through a bunch of these just little push-in plastic Christmas trees until I found one where the barbs just fit, so it's nice and tight. These are Tech Spec universal knee pad set, and my jeans are starting to scuff up the side of the tank, so I buffed it out, and then I used some tape and made my own pattern, and then I cut these out with an X-Acto knife and then just sanded the edges with a belt sander before I installed them. It has a similar shape and flow to the tank, so it looks like it's supposed to be there, but because my hands go numb easily from riding, I like to squeeze the tank with my legs to take the pressure off my hands, and I was marring up the paint, so they don't look too bad. I'd prefer not to have them, but all things considered, it keeps them from getting scuffed up. I hooked the Power Commander 5 with a USB cable that's supplied with it up to my my Windows 10 computer, and I updated the map. The firmware of the unit was already fine because it's brand new. Now this is meant for a Scout 60, and right now the current mapping that Dynojet has on their Power Commander website does not have the Bassani 2-in-1 with a Trask for the Scout 60. They do have a Bassani 2-in-1 with a different style intake for the regular Scout, but the fueling's slightly different. So I sent an email to tech support, and they gave me the recommended map to use until I can get the bike on a dyno. Let's dig into this pile and get some instructions out. I'm going to kind of do everything at once, so I kind of have to split the instructions between the exhaust install and the Power Commander install, and I'm pretty sure the first thing we're going to end up doing is removing the seat fuel tank. Alrighty, get the seat out. You just grab the front lip, pop it off, and carefully slide it up and out. Pop up this little rubber cover. You got two vent tubes here that you got to pull off. Pretty easy. Then undo these bolts. Now all these bolts are loose, so the tank is loose. So I got to get under it and disconnect the fuel line. Lift up the old fuel tank. There's an electrical connector. Comes off. This is the fuel. Got it right there. And so you squeeze in the sides and off it comes. And we got a little bit of gas dripping out, but there's not very much. Alright. Well, I went ahead and supported the tank with a piece of wood because this is really tight. You gotta get the fuel line out. And the connector on the end of the fuel hose is bigger than the space you got to push it through. There we go. You gotta come back at an angle, and there's just enough room to get that dude through. So after you get that fuel line off and the connector off there, you just grab the tank at the front, support it on the back by the bracket, and gently wiggle it towards the rear of the bike while you're pulling up. And with a little patience, you get it off, no scratches, yay! Put your fuel tank in a safe spot. I've got padding underneath of it. You can just barely see a little shop towel for the end of that hose, and it's not going to get scratched and tore up because it's out of the way. I'd hate to be doing all this work and scratch the hell out of the fuel tank. This is the Trask high flow intake, replacing the factory air box. I'm going to go ahead and disassemble it to get this to the point where I can put this on so that it's easier to route the wires for the power commander. That's why I kind of waited till I got everything at the same time so I didn't have to repeat my work. Because the stock air box is pinched between these upper connecting steel tubes that connect the cast aluminum frame, we have to get the bike supported in the middle because we're basically taking the frame apart. So I've got a jack with just enough tension underneath of it to hold the weight of the bike. I'm not lifting it, it's just supporting it. And then I've got a wooden block, and I've got the handlebars just right here to where it's stable enough to take the airbox out. 13 mil bolt there. And these guys over here on the frame are 15, so just take them out. Both of those are now loose, and that front bolt I can still move by hand slightly, and the other one's loose enough to be able to get it apart. So now we undo the rear ones, and we just take that guy right off. And we're not going to take it off the bike, we're just going to kind of let it hang, because I don't need to take it all the way off to get this guy out. This bit is pretty easy. Just take loose this big old hose clamp here. Wrestle this bear off the top of the engine. There we go. Off it comes. Just take that off, and this little rubber boot, because you don't need it anymore. The Trask kit gives you these two new hoses because of the way this filter sits. The original hoses, which I'll just pull right off, are a bit too long. So you got these other hoses that will get you to where you need to go. And figure out what's the best way to get at that clamp after it's on the bike. And then it just sits on over the intake. The throttle body, that is. Push the old hoses on. There's that one. Finish pushing this dude down. There we go. It's on there solid. Hoses are seated onto that pipe. Alright, job done. So now I think I'll put both of these frame rails on. This filter's so much more narrow that I should be able to get at. Yeah, I can still get my hands in there, so I'll put the frame back together so the bike's supported and I don't have to have the jack underneath of it. I got the Trask in, I got the breather tubes connected, and I got the clamp onto the throttle body connected. The jack we had under the bike, I had to raise it up and lower it slightly to get these bolts to line back up, but it wasn't too hard. You may want to have a helper. So now I've got the Trask installed here. You can see there's the one injector, there's the other one, the coils. So I can get after that stuff now, and it's not in my way. It should make my life a little easier. I'm still going to follow the instructions that Power Commander gives me to take these covers off and kind of pull some stuff out of the way just to get some extra space. So next step is for me to read through this and then start installing Power Commander. I was looking around, and Trask doesn't actually list the torque values for these bolts, and I don't have a current Indian shop manual, so I basically tighten them down GNT, good and tight. And what I've done is, I mean, I didn't over tighten them. I didn't want to break the bolts. I did lay onto them with a breaker bar. Tried to approximate to myself how much torque I had to put into them to get them off. And then I just indexed them with a little bit of really bright chartreuse paint. And then all I have to do is just glance in under the tank from time to time and make sure that all of my bolts are still indexed with paint. Then I know they haven't worked loose. These guys are three-pin connectors, and so this has got a root down through here. You can look straight down there and see that there is indeed a space. It ain't a hell of a lot of space, but there is certainly space to do this. Alright, it was a little bit of a bear wrestle, but I got that wire routed down through the bulkhead there in front of the swing arm. You can see here's our wire, and that's the rectifier bracket. Got this ran in front of the swing arm, not behind it, in front of it. And now I'm looking for the crank position sensor, which is where the other end of this gets plugged into. Interesting turn of events. Apparently there's a slight change. I think my Scout 60's technically a 2017 model. I gotta look at the title. The crank position sensor should be there should be a connector right behind the side stand, and I've looked high and low for it. There's just wires. There's no connector back there. Over here. That's where the connector should live. I've already taken it loose, but the crank position sensor lives up there now. You can see the connector's undone, and it's tie wrapped in place. And it took me a good 15 minutes to locate that guy right there. So, that's where it lives now. Don't go looking there for it. It is not behind the side stand. And it's actually a good change. They lengthened the wire, and then they routed it up and above and behind the rectifier bracket here. It gets it out of the dirt and the rain and whatnot. But, so in the Power Commander instructions, they say it's behind the side stand. So you'll be like, huh, where's the crank position connector, or the crank position sensor connector? Well, anyhow, that's where she lives. The harness is now plugged into the factory crank position sensor, and now all I got to do is neaten it up and tie wrap the wiring in place so that it stays out of the elements. That's the final configuration. The little Y harness that plugs into the crank position sensor is plugged in. I reused a little plastic tree that they had at the factory with the tie wrap on it, and then I used about 3 more tie wraps. And so everything's away from that tube. It's up and away from anything that could get filthy, and it looks pretty good. And then I added that tie wrap right there to keep the wiring on this side of the bike so that it can go up. And it's basically routed the way it was originally. It's just Indian moved the location of that connector. So now you know, if you got a 2016/2017, well, at least a Scout 60. I don't know about the standard Scout. They moved the crank position sensor connector. Now that the mystery of where on earth is the crank position sensor is solved, that actually gives me a little bit extra lead on that. Next step is you need to ground the unit, and it goes to this common ground point for the whole bike. Kind of watch how you're loosening it because you're wrenching it towards the fender. It would be a heartbreaking moment to to bang that sucker into your nicely finished fender there. And the instructions, the next step they want you to do is Velcro this. I guess they want you to Velcro it to the top of that. I'm not going to do that because I don't need to be able to read what these covers say. What I'm going to do is there's some room right here to fish this dude in. You know, I've got extra length on the wire that goes down to the crank position sensor. Should be enough room under this wiring harness if you take the connectors and just scooch them out of the way. Alright, so this is my solution here. I took the main wiring loom here, I tucked it under this main harness, and then that turned it around so the plug was facing this way, and then I was able to wrangle a couple of the original connectors down and out of the way, and when the seat sits there, you know, this will just get pushed down. It's not attached, it doesn't need to be. I mean, there's nothing really underneath of it, and it should keep out of the way, and then it gives me the ability to route this wire right along the side of the fuse box there. The next one is the rear ignition coil, this guy here. I'm probably going to be using more tire wraps. The kit supplies one. That's not enough. It's pretty obvious which wires go where. You know, based upon the length of the wiring harness, they can only really go in one way. So the one with the blue and the white wire goes on the rear cylinder here. Clip that dude in, and then, you know, continue to follow the harness along. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tie wrap this lead. That's the connector to the fuel pump. I'm going to go ahead and tie wrap these guys up and out of the way. I'm just going to put a tie wrap right here on the frame, kind of like what the factory did. I want to make sure that this stuff doesn't get caught up in any critical areas. I want it to stay clear of stuff on the bike. That's the factory coil lead. And so there's a little bit of wire right there. It needs to be a little slack on some of this stuff. I'm going to just tie wrap this here, just so those wires are neat. Alright, the next leads, which are these, and it makes sense, I mean it's the next on the harness here. You got a pair of yellow and white wires. They go to the injector lead, which is conveniently right there. A little plastic tab, which you got to pull up on. Grab a little pair of pliers and pull up. That disengages the connector. The connector should just pop right off that dude. Man, I am glad that I got the air box out of the way, because this would certainly be a lot more difficult. So this little red tab gets pushed up, and then you press down on a button and it disengages it. Then it's pretty simple. You basically plug this in line, so that dude goes in there, lock it in, and then this connector goes where the other one used to be. There we go. All clicked in. And like I was doing before, keep the wiring neat as I go. So I do have a connector over here by the throttle body I gotta wire in. So I'm just kind of fishing that up there for now. This stuff's gonna be hidden by the fuel tank when you put everything back together. But I like to work neat. There's plenty of room there. Just tie wrap stuff around the factory wiring harness to secure things. See what I mean? There's a tie wrap there, and then that's the plug that used to be on the injector. But I don't want that out there just bobbing around all loose like, so I'll just fish another tie wrap in here. Hardest thing about doing this is getting your fingers in everywhere. Now, I gotta get at this clip here on the throttle body servo, because I gotta get after that wire, but this harness is in my way. I'm gonna cut this tie wrap and I'll replace it. And that should free up the wiring loom just a little bit. There we go. Now I can get after that guy. Alright, so got that dude loose. And what we're looking for here is that there's an orange and yellow wire. That guy right there, that's the orange and yellow. There's this gray wire here. It's not on any connector. That needs to go into this with this posi tap. That's it. Connection made. And just plug the wire back into the servo. There's a little clip here on the side of the throttle body that wire sits in. I'm just trying to make sure everything's back the way it's supposed to be. I'll tie wrap that dude back in place here in a second. And we'll neaten this wiring up too. Let's see. That was up like that. I'm going to go ahead and incorporate my new wiring harness into some of these mounting locations for the old wiring harness, or the original wiring harness. Just pull that wire back towards the connector and slam on another tie wrap right over the heat shrink portion of it, just so it's got some extra room to wiggle around. Everything's held in proper locations. Nothing's too tight. Everything looks good. I'm going to take this side cover off here. I need a little bit more room for my finger. Not much. Just remove the 3 bolts that hold the bracket that holds the side cover. Now I can take this radiator hose and gently, ever so gently, move them just a little bit out of my way here. This guy is the wire off the top of the injector. Got that off, and then these are the 2 wires that get plugged in line with where the injector were. You've got a red and a white and orange wire, and then a red and an orange wire here. And then the only other connectors are the ones that go to the front coil. So let me plug these in. I now have the front injector plugged in. I've got to neaten these wires up here. The last connector is the front coil, which is pretty easy. Just lift up the tab, wiggle it off, then take that and plug it in line here. And other than getting your hands into stuff, you know, this whole process is pretty easy. Instructions are pretty good. The exception of that small change on the 60, and that's it. All I got to do is just tie wrap these wires up, and then we can go on to the next step. Everything's tie wrapped and where it needs to go. Put the nice side cover back on. Alright, next thing on the agenda here is I have to install the O2 optimizers, is what they call these guys. And really, they're just O2 sensor bypasses. The Power Commander 5 is a closed loop system, so it doesn't use the O2 sensors. So living up here is the O2 sensor plug. I just gotta find it and fish it out. Another little bit of a change, I think, for the Scout 60 is how this guy's routed. It's not going to drop out the bottom like it shows on the instructions, so I untie wrapped the O2 sensor lead from the wiring harness, and I'm going to be able to just get at it from this end. Alright, so I got it disconnected and wrestled out, and then it's pretty easy. You just put the little bypass guy in there and click it in place. Done deal. Now I just got to tuck that in, tie wrap it, and find the front one. I ended up taking the entire O2 sensor out. I'm just going to keep a hold of these because my new Bassani 2-in-1 exhaust does not use, well, I won't be using the O2 sensors because the Power Commander is closed loop. So that plug that I just put on that connector is to bypass this, but I'm not going to reinstall it, so I can just leave it off. But this was a pain in the ass. You have to take it loose from the exhaust side and feed it back through the frame, because on my 2016 Scout, the way they've got it routed in between a bracket in this, and you can't get this connector to come out, so it's got to go the other direction. I'm going to crack this guy loose. It's nice when it's a new bike because these things aren't like seized up like they are on old ass cars. So that is the O2 sensor. I just unplugged it. I just plug in that clip, and that's it. I just got to tie wrap that up there. Get the fuel tank in. Should be a little easier because the airbox isn't in my way. There's little rubber cups that the front end kind of seat into. The fuel hose here. Get routed. Rotate that connector. And that goes in the end of there, but I'm not going to plug that in yet. And right now I'm going to plug in the wiring harness clip, which is right beside the fitting. And I'm going to push the tank forward until it stops. These vent tubes get plugged back in.
all these little rubber cushions everything sits on. Try and line everything back up. Those just push up to these little barbs. And these little rubber guys tuck in between the frame rails. Like that. I've got to get this connected next. This fitting here just pushes straight on, but you have to tug the hose a little bit towards you because it has to go straight in. Like that. Nice click. And she's in there. So, just 4 more bolts. One wiggle on a tank, make sure it's in the right spot. And actually, when you go to connect the crank position sensor, you'll see the end of that tube. So when there's too much gas vapor and the fuel vapor has to expand and it condenses, it'll just drain down these tubes and out onto the ground. These don't have to be reefed on. They're going steel bolts going into aluminum threads. You can screw something up by over tightening it. The cover sits down like that. Bob's your uncle. Will it start up? TV on position. I don't see any red lights on the power commander, so it's happy, and it's got a green light. Fuel pump's on. Flashlight. Check it. There's no leaks at the fitting. System's under pressure. So now, should be able to just crank it up. Can't run it for too long because the reason why it's so loud is the O2 sensors are not in the not in the exhaust pipes. Well, the Trask Intake instructions and the instructions for the Power Commander 5 are very detailed as far as everything. For Bassani, they figure you know what you're doing. So step 1, they say remove stock exhaust, and that's it. So we have to make up our own way of doing this. I'm just going to start at the back and work my way forward because they're basically, the mufflers are slipped on to these head pipes, and so I'm going to work my way up to the engine. Say 13 millimeter. There's no, well, 13 millimeter bolt. There's no nut on the back side of it. These are 2 exhaust clamps and the bolts come down at an angle, so as far as I can tell, you got a bolt at the back that holds the back together. These 2 bolts that hold the pipes to, there's like an arm here that helps support it, and then these are what seal it to the head pipe. And I'm going to put all of this stuff in the box that the Bassanis came in, so I can reuse it. Creak. Just going to back off these and loosen it up so the clamp moves now. I know it's loose enough, I should be able to get that guy off. I'm just going to loosen them up to where it moves. If it can move, then it's probably loose enough. So this one is going to be a little challenging because I don't think I got enough room to get my ratchet in there. These guys are just going to have to come off by hand. So I took the bolt off here that comes in from that end, and then there's a bracket, another bolt that holds this upper one. The tab and bolt that holds the lower one's actually bolted in from this side, not from the back. So to get at it, you actually have to pull this pipe off first. So here's the fun part. Patience and wiggling. So after working on it for about 2 or 3 minutes, just little circles. Got a paper towel there protecting it against that bolt. There we go. Man, that sucker's heavy. Ugh. Got my leg under there supporting that. That's a repeat of the top. Except for I got more room to wiggle now. Just like the top one. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle in circles. While pulling back on it. And off it comes. Boom! This is the next bolt to come out down here. I could cut the heat shield tabs, but I don't think I need to. I should be able to just take it loose at the collector flange at the motor. The flange bolts on the cylinder head are 13 millimeter, and they're really wonderful to get at. So I'm using a swivel attachment, and so I don't bang up the finish. There we go. Wasn't too hateful. So that dude is off. So yeah, you definitely got to do it that way. I have to get that off. And weasel my hand back in here to take this end off. Just like plant. Now, I should. And there we go. So I box all that stuff up. So it comes off. And this bracket. Now I don't know if these are going to get used by the Bassani kit, so I'll leave those right there for now. And then this gets set to the side. So now I can actually start putting the new one on as soon as I pry out those old gaskets. I'm just using my nifty 90-degree angle screwdriver here to get inside the... Oh, did it find it? Will it find its way to the ground? Nope. So there's that one, which just fell out on me. Now, Bassani says that you can reuse those, but those look like one-time use crush washers to me, so I had already ordered a new set of gaskets. This stud actually sticks out a little further than I think, because if I tighten that all the way down there, this end of this bolt's going to bottom out. So what I'm going to do, even though the instructions doesn't say to do it, I'm going to take this washer used to be on this bolt that held the original exhaust bracket on. I'm just going to use that as a spacer along with that, then do what they said. A little bit of blue thread locker there. And, I mean, this is really just here for looks. Doesn't serve any practical purpose other than that. It doesn't hold anything. So I can start putting the pipes on the bike now. I got that nut on there, and I did have to have that washer because it pretty much would have bottomed out otherwise. And it was fun getting it on there. So because I'm using a power commander, I need to plug off these O2 bungs, and they're just 12 millimeter plugs is all they are. I'm going to go ahead and do this because I'd sure hate for this to vibrate and blow this thing right out of the exhaust. And I know it's going to get super hot anyhow, but it should buy me some time until the exhaust warms up and everything kind of expands and contracts and works its way into place. And this chrome plating's down in the threads there, so there we go. It's a little tricky to get it on. If you were going to just use this without a power commander, you would just thread in the O2 sensor like you normally would. And I've got a set of nice new gaskets. So take this guy, shove him up in here, finagle this guy in place. Wiggle or two there to make sure that the gasket is in place. And then try ever so gently to not drop bolts down inside the motorcycle. Not that I haven't done that twice or 3 times. Alright, that's one nut. Get the lower one on, which is the fun one, because there's enough room to get 2 fingers up in there and that's it. Now these just get slightly tightened according to the instructions. They don't get ran all the way down, because we need to have room to wiggle everything to get everything else in alignment. The next step is to get the heat shield on, but I want to clean my fingerprints off of there. I mean, it's all going to be hidden behind the heat shield anyhow, but especially when it's so close to the exhaust port on the head, I like to get all my grubby mitt prints off there so that they're not permanently etched into the chrome, even though this is not for show because of the heat shield going over the top of the whole thing. Alright, so clamps threaded in there. I'm going to have to put this dude on. I'll have to wiggle these guys into place. Alright, so I got that O2 plug in there, and I put the new gasket up, and now I'm just threading the flange nuts on here. These flange nuts get reused, so don't lose them. I already like this system better than the stock one, just because of the way it routes. The stock one, this pipe comes like this way, and this wraps around the engine, and so these two pipes end up being almost the same length, and it's a stepped header design, so it gets progressively bigger as it goes down. You can see the welds, so that helps pull the exhaust gas out as it expands. This bracket goes on next. You don't put the heat shield on right now, and all that stuff is loose. Now, I saw this on the Indian forums. These spacers, the short one goes in the front as well as the short bolt, and the long one goes on the back as well as the long bolt. The bolts won't fit through the spacers, so I ended up drilling them out. And it doesn't say it in the instructions, but I'm going to put some blue Loctite on the ends of these threads real quick before I run them in. These get done up loosely. None of this stuff gets tightened all the way down yet. The muffler itself goes on next, and these barrel clamps go on with bolt heads facing up on both. Slide those on there gently. Then put these dudes onto this pipe. And I'm doing the same thing I did to get the original pipes off. I'm just doing the old wiggle, and it's still not forward far enough. It's got more wiggling to do. Now, no matter how tempted I was, and I did not want to get a rubber mallet out, because the end of this pipe is finished off in nice billet aluminum. Like, need more fingers. There's not enough spaces. I ended up having to take this bolt almost all the way out, loosen everything off, get these two started, and then, you know, because all this stuff is handmade by a little shop, Bassani. I think they're in California. And you know, they have fixtures and jigs, but you just have to play with it until things line up. Next thing I have to do here is I have to tighten up the front flange bolts, then the rear flange bolts, and then I can tighten these up, and then I can put the heat shield on. There's just not a lot of room to get up in there. Oh, I think I got the combination right there. Good thing I'm using a little ratchet because I can't possibly over torque it, because this pipe's at a slightly different angle than the original one, so I can't get in there with the open end wrench like I could before. But I lucked out. I can get in there with the 1/4 inch drive and a swivel attachment on that 13mm bolt. Just a whole lot of extensions and a lot of weaseling in there. So next I have to install the rear heat shield here. And I've already arranged the clamps so that they're facing the direction I can get at. It's interesting, sometimes you think that the hose clamps are going to go one direction until you try it, and then you're like, oh, hey, that's not going to work. Next thing I'm going to do is align these two barrel clamps. Basically, just about everything is loose with the exception of the flange bolts at the cylinder head, and they're not tightened all the way up yet. And these two clamps face straight up. Holding these clamps out, and then there's two tabs, and they slot into the heat shield, and then this dude goes around the top like so. So push it forward until these two tabs slot in, and then it should be right where it's supposed to go. They don't give you instructions on which clamp to do it first. They just say do them all up. I'm just going through and tightening up clamps. I'm using my 1/4 inch drive, A, because it's convenient, it fits in everywhere, and B, I can't really, especially if I'm using just 2 fingers here, over torque these bolts. And on the last two, almost ready to fire this thing up. I can't wait. Tighten these two 15mm bolts down next. Guys here get snug up. These didn't need any Loctite because they got split washers and flat washers. Carefully weasel it in there. I went over everything again from back to front, retightened the flange bolts at the cylinder head, and double checked all the fasteners. Everything's good. I have clearance everywhere. Last thing I need to do is clean my greasy paw prints off the bike. I mean, with the powder coated exhaust, I don't think this is super duper important, but it's good practice. If it was a chrome exhaust, you definitely want to do this before you fire it up the first time, or you'll get permanently etched fingerprints in the exhaust. Clean this up, clean the bike off, put the seat back on it, wheel it outside, and we'll get to hear what it sounds like the after, because I've been working on this all day. I started at about 10. It's probably about 7 o'clock in the evening, and I was working on it almost non-stop. So we installed the Trask Intake Power Commander 5 system and the Bassani 2-in-1 exhaust. I can't wait. And the last bit here is fitting the seat back on. That's where my Power Commander module is. And make sure everything's in place. Vent lines are back on. Slide it over the stud in the back. Done deal. That sounds way better than the original exhaust. Well, it's after a very, very, very long day. I got all the stuff installed on Burt, all the hardware checked and double checked and triple checked. I ended up having to move one of the clamps on the exhaust. Everything's sealed, nothing's leaking. It runs pretty good. There's a little bit of an idle surge, but it needs to go to a Dynojet authorized dealer through my Indian dealership, Spartan Cycle. It's going to set it out to get it dyno tuned. Right now it's on a generic map. So yeah, it's a long video. It's a longer day. But thanks for sticking around, and hopefully this shows anyone interested in doing the Bassani 2-in-1 just how much work there is involved in doing it. I can tell you, you'll have to drill out those spacers for the hanger, and for sure you should probably remove the bracket for the master cylinder, the rear master cylinder, and get it out of your way. I've got a little tiny scratch on mine which I can touch up and you pretty much can't see it. So if that was the worst of what happened after taking off the tank and doing all the other stuff on the bike, I'm a happy camper. Anyhow, thanks for watching, and until I see everyone again, ride safe.